Welcome back to CryptosRUs. I am George. We're all George. So, welcome to another market open stream. Today, are things a little better? Yes, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what is happening right now, what to expect, and the new target that Bitcoin is locked in on. So, let's do it. Let's do it, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are starting out the day at 116, which is basically the same as yesterday. We did dip slightly lower last night, all the way down to 114.4, and there's actually a good reason for it. Well, I shouldn't say good reason, but there was a reason for it. I'll get to that in a little bit. But things are coming up a little bit, slightly today, so that is good. The US market is also a little bit in the green, so that's good. We'll see how today goes. Of course, we are a day... Well, actually, there's a couple things happening, but let's talk about the first thing. Yesterday... I think some people, just like last week when Putin met with Trump, some people were a little worried. You know, Wall Street was worried. I think Wall Street was a little worried yesterday as well because of, Zelensky and other European leaders came to U.S. and they had a chat. This time it seemed like it was pretty good. There wasn't a lot of shouting or a lot of finger pointing. Everyone seemed very nice. Seemed like they're all on board. And Trump promised Ukraine security guarantees in which Ukraine is going to be paying $90 billion for a whole lot of weapons. And Trump is saying that he's going to set up a meeting with Putin so the two leaders can talk. So this could be big. This could be big. If we could finally get an end to the war in Europe, I mean, that's going to definitely help things, right? So I think that people were kind of afraid that this may have gone nowhere, but it seems like, it seems like it went pretty well. It seems like it went pretty well. This has nothing to do with anything, but I found this to be kind of funny, but it makes sense. European defense stocks slide as there's hope for peace, right? So why do we have war? It's always about money, right? So all the defense contractors, now they're worried that the war is going to be over because there's no one to sell their weapons to. So I just found that to be kind of funny. Anyways, that is it. And then we got Jackson Hole to worry about later this week. We got the Fed minutes that's coming out tomorrow. A lot of stuff happening this week. A lot of macro stuff happening this week. That's why markets have been kind of shaky to start. We also had Bitcoin. We had some Bitcoin outflows. Yesterday, we had 121 million, 68.7 million from BlackRock. That is rare, very rare. So that's 2 days in a row. But you can see BlackRock normally takes in, and only that. Very rarely do they see outflow, but recently they've seen a few days. So yesterday we had a little bit of outflow. Ethereum also had outflow. They sold 87 million of ETH, and overall we had almost minus 200 million for ETH. So this is a reason why ETH and Bitcoin both a little bit down, okay? Not to exaggerate, not way down, just a little bit down. And here's another reason why Bitcoin dipped down to 114.4 yesterday is because the stupid CME gap. Because we went up so fast, or early July, people forgot about the fact that we had a gap between 114.3 and 115, right? So recently we filled a gap between 117 and 119, and people thought it was over. But then, you know what? We had this other gap that we never filled, and now we filled it. You know, these CME gaps, okay? They always somehow fill. Sometimes it takes a few weeks, sometimes it takes a few months, sometimes it takes over a year, but they tend to get filled. So I guess the good thing about this is we finally got it done and we don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't know, that's the best way to look at it, but they tend to get filled often. All right, but now that we have filled it, what's next? Right, well, analysts still expect a rebound, not a crash. I don't think there's any analyst out there that expects a big Bitcoin crash right now. There is none, because obviously what we're going through is caused by the macro conditions, short-term macro conditions. Nothing fundamentally has changed at all, and the accumulation is still very, very heavy. So I don't think there's anyone that expects a crash at this point. And if you're worried, you simply zoom out. And I've shown you guys this trend line. Bitcoin tends to, dip down, utilize as support, and then move on. And you can see how it hit that trend line perfectly and stopped. Just like last time when we fell down to 111, then we utilized that as support and it went all the way up to 124. This time we came back down to 114. And we're probably going to continue. Just like all the times before, we utilize it as a trend line. Now, sometimes you break through. Sometimes you get a bigger correction. But then we still pick ourselves back up and keep going. That's how Bitcoin works, right? And like I said, heavy accumulation has not stopped and continues to happen. Another mysterious whale picked up 172 million. These are large amounts. Okay, they're not sailor amounts, but they're pretty close. 172 million out of nowhere. Last week we also saw almost 4,000 Bitcoin being bought. That was just last week, okay? Not last month or last year. Last week. South Korea's pension fund increased their Bitcoin exposure by almost 200%. And David Bailey's Kindly MD, I didn't even know this. He's the founder of Bitcoin Magazine and Bitcoin Conference. He also has Kindly MD, and they just acquired 5,700 Bitcoin for close to $700 million. So again, heavy accumulation happening, has not stopped. The fundamentals for Bitcoin continues to grow stronger. So this is the reason why nothing has changed. Besides a little macro FUD, okay? That's what we're going through. A little macro FUD, a little liquidation, CME Gap filled. That's pretty much it. Hey, Brazil's also thinking about creating a national strategic Bitcoin reserve. So it's happening all around. And not only that, one of the biggest tech companies is now getting involved, and that is Google. Google has now become the largest shareholder of this TeraWulf mining company. They own 14% now. So it's interesting. Google slowly coming in. They should just buy Bitcoin or buy ETH or buy Sol, buy whatever, right? But they're starting out with a mining company. Baby steps. But eventually all the big tech companies, they will follow. They will enter the space. No doubt they're paying attention to what's happening with Wall Street and how their appetite for Bitcoin is enormous. they're not oblivious to it. But this could be seen as the first step into crypto. So pretty good. Pretty good. All right, last few things about Bitcoin. You know, I showed you guys the trend line that I created, right? We pretty much followed it perfectly, but this is another one. This is just utilizing the 50-day EMA, and you can see how Bitcoin also tends to follow that trend line, bounce off of there, and then continue forward. And if you're an educated person, you would say, hey, those green dots are pretty good buying points. Those are when you should be buying because Bitcoin is oversold and tends to bounce. That's exactly where we are right now. And then the new target, or the overall target, right, is still in play. Has anything changed? No. When in doubt, zoom out and you look at where we are now, it doesn't really seem like anything has changed. Any of these little dips, they're distractions. When you zoom out, you don't even notice them. We are going through a phase where it's the least volatile of any period that followed behind us. So don't panic, continue to hodl and DCA. Even Tom Lee expects ETH to have a healthy dip. So even though ETH is at, what, 4,300, he even said, hey, it could correct down to 40.75 to 41.50. Dips are healthy. And he holds the largest stockpile of ETH there is. It was up to like $6.6 billion now. I think last time I checked, 6.6 billion. They added even more. And he's not worried. He's never been. So, I mean, basically, again, don't be scared. Know that dips and corrections are normal. But those that take advantage are the ones that benefit. There's another Ethereum treasury company now besides BitMine, besides Tom Lee's. There's one that's called ETHZilla. So now they begin trading. They did like a reverse merger. So they already have stock, but now it's actually called ETHZilla. And they have $420 million worth of ETH. So it'll be interesting to see how ETH treasury companies do on the open market, right? We'll see how they go moving forward. There's also this Sharplink Gaming just bought 143,000 ETH, 667 million. So if you thought maybe ETH's strength have left, well, it seems like that's not the case. There are a lot of companies now jumping on the bandwagon and loading up on ETH at this point. So I think they'll be just fine. All right, lastly, I saw this. This has me a little confused. So Wyoming came out with their own stablecoin. And the stablecoin doesn't have to follow Genius Act because it's launched by a sovereign state. So I didn't know this. So sovereign states basically could do whatever the hell they want. So they could launch a stablecoin, which they did. And whatever fees they collect could be given back to investors as a yield. But right now it's going to their school system, which is interesting. But like how they get people to use it, that's going to be a different story. But the reason why I'm confused about this is earlier this year, it said that they selected Say as the chain that they're going to launch the token on. But I don't know when the plan changed. So now they decide to debut on 7 different networks. including Ethereum, Solana, and Avalanche, and Polygon, and Arbitrum, Optimum Base, but not Say. I don't know why. I mean, it was rumored and reported that they were going to launch on Say, which is why Say had a huge pump earlier, and now it's not even on Say, which is, again, just, I don't know when they changed their plans, but it did. But anyways, this could set a precedence for other states to launch their own, or even cities to launch their own. But, you know, launching is one thing. Whether they get adoption is another, right? So we'll see what they do. But if people can get yield from holding this Wyoming Frontier stablecoin, I think a lot of people would hold it, would buy and hold it. All right, that's pretty much it. U.S. market still kind of mixed. Dow's green, NASDAQ red. Strategy, Coinbase, Circle, all down today. So, still correcting. All right, let's do some Q&A. Richard asked about Link. Link actually got a big boost recently because they formed a deal with ICE, the parent company of CME, I think, or no, New York Stock Exchange, to provide some data. So that's what Link is good for. They're the biggest decentralized oracle. They provide data links to Web 2 companies and Web 3 companies. So that was a pretty big announcement. And it also, you know, what do you call it? It makes them more more adopted with that, especially with traditional finance. What's my price target for Sol? I'm going to stick with my target from before, which is $1,000. And yeah, I don't think really anything has changed. I think, you know, that's like a 6x from here. That's definitely doable. That's less than 6x, but that's definitely doable. I think big cap alts, with the exception of maybe ETH, can all do at least a 5x. You know, or maybe like a 4x. 4x, 5x, I think it's certainly possible. So I'm going to stick with that. No way it's going to be 280. We were at 280, or we were at $300 earlier this year already. It was already at 295. Okay, when things move, they move fast. I mean, if you don't believe me, look at this. January 13th, it was at it dipped down to 169. And then went all the way up here to 300 within 2 weeks. Yeah. So, you know, when things move, they move really fast. And altcoin season, that's usually what happens. You have 2 to 4 weeks where things move tremendously. Money's flowing left and right, and you got everything pumping. But this cycle, I think we have to be more strategic. I don't think everything is going to be pumping. Maybe some will do well and at least get to their previous 2021 high. But some will definitely do better and break above and go much higher. It wasn't just because of Trump coin, man. All the meme coins were exploding. Sol is definitely carried by meme coins, and I think it still will be. So nothing's going to change from that. Once memes get hot again, vast majority of the successful ones are on Sol. So do the math. Man, everything in my list is red today. Waiting for things to turn green. Remind us what happens to Bitcoin if BlackRock forks the chain. We get Bitcoin, we get another flavor like Bitcoin Cash. Nothing's gonna happen to Bitcoin. But they're not gonna do it. That would be stupid of them. Yeah, we're probably gonna be like this until Friday. Tomorrow we got the Fed minutes coming out. I think a lot of people are looking to see if there's any dovish like tone from the previous meeting. And then people are gonna wait for that Jackson Hole speech. I don't know what the tradition is. I don't know why Powell always goes to Jackson Hole and why he always gives some kind of synopsis on the economy. It seems like there's too many of those. It seems like, you know, besides FOMC meetings, he attends, he testifies in front of Congress, he goes to Jackson Hole, he goes to like all these other meetings or something, and then like everyone's waiting to hear from him. He has so much power to move markets. It's crazy. But there always seems to be something where he's talking, and whenever he does, gets markets all spooky. Spencer says, because Powell has massive open shorts every time he's about to open his mouth. I wonder if Fed chairs are prevented from buying stocks. You know, they've been trying to stop Congress people from buying stocks for a long time. Never happened. I don't know if Fed chairs are allowed to. That would be interesting if he's allowed to, or his family members are allowed to. But it seems like that's a big conflict. Jane Jan asking, are you impressed with Bassett? I think he's a bit soft. Still not addressed the massive debt to GDP problem. I don't think he could really address it because I think we all know that it is something that can't be addressed, especially with a big, beautiful bill, which he highly endorses, but I mean, he basically never goes against Trump. The big beautiful bill is supposed to cut in a lot of areas, but also spends in a lot of areas, which is why it increases the deficit. No, not. It will increase the debt ceiling by potentially 4 trillion more. So obviously, that's not helping with the debt issue. Lutnick seems to think that tariffs is going to make a big deal and offset the increase. I don't. So far, that hasn't been the case. We have seen money come in from tariff, but does it offset our spending in any way? Not really, no. I mean, we pay, as a country, more than $1 trillion just in interest payments on borrowed money. Take a second to think about that. That's 1 trillion right there. And then we spend another trillion, close to $1 trillion on defense budget. So that's 2 trillion right there. That's just the beginning. What about everything else that we have to spend money on? So we don't have enough money. We don't collect enough. That's the bottom line. Not meme says Fed chairs and other senior Fed officials are prohibited from buying or holding stocks or sector funds. But are their family members prohibited? That's the thing. Because when they try to do this with Congress, they're like, yeah, you know, most of them said, yeah, you know, we're okay if we don't buy. But then when they try to go beyond that and say, well, then your family members can't buy either. And they're like, no, we don't agree with that. Because they're just getting their spouse to buy, or, you know, their family members to buy. They don't have to buy directly themselves. So I don't know if that rule applies to Fed chairs and other senior Fed officials. Man, this thing keeps dropping. So September 17th is the next FOMC press conference day. Decision will be made. 25 basis point cut, 83% chance, which is good, which means it's going to happen. But we were in 96% territory. Now we're down to 83%. That's no good. Hopefully, what he says this Friday, Powell, and the minutes tomorrow do not drop this even more. That would be bad. There's no FOMC meeting in November. It's September, October, and December this year. Get rid of the Fed, problem solved. A lot of people have made that argument that we really don't need a Fed. You know, if you read that book, I forgot the name. Something about island. No, I don't know if it's spelled island, but I forgot the name of the book. But basically, the Fed was created to help banks stay in power, not because it was meant to help people. It was really created to keep bigger banks in power, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, the Jekyll Island. It's an old book, but basically describes why the Fed was created. I mean, over time, I'm sure it's changed a little bit, but I don't know. I just don't think we could ever go back. Our monetary system is just broken. It's it's held together by a lot of band-aids. And one day when a band-aid gets ripped off or burst or whatever, and the whole thing collapses, that's when the USD is done. That may be in a while, maybe in a long while, but it's going to happen because we could all see it. The deficit keeps rising, the debt keeps increasing. We are just under this burden of needing to pay interest and pay back money that we owe, and it's a never-ending cycle. They're devaluing the dollar to make stablecoin transition. No, that's exactly the opposite. The reason why Bassett likes stablecoins, why they're pushing for stablecoins so heavily, is because they're mostly backed by USD, not by any other currency. So the thinking is it's going to make the USD more valuable, more wanted if stablecoins dominate in the future. So that's the thinking. Not that they really want to make a transition. They want to make sure that the USD stays the dominant reserve currency, and it will if the world transits to stablecoins because they're all backed by USD. So think about it. It makes people and companies basically hold more money, cash, USD. If you think about it, it's actually pretty smart. It's really betting on the future, making sure that other currencies don't become the reserve currency of stablecoins. But, you know, it's going to take some time. It'll take some time before the world transits to stablecoins. Pete. Do you think Jerome Backshot Powell speaking Friday will be positive? I don't think anything he says is ever positive, if I'm being honest. I'm always hopeful he says some good things, but it's never good. He's always hawkish. He's always taking this tone like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to cut. You know, I just don't know. I need more data, or I need to see inflation go down, or I need to see this and that. Like the last FOMC meeting press conference, he scared the bejesus out of people by saying, well, we're not considering a rate cut in September. Nothing planned yet. And that just like totally ruined the mood. He could have said, hey, we're just waiting to see. But he was like almost saying it to spite Trump. I don't know. He just doesn't give a F at this point. I don't think he's out next year and he's like, I'm just gonna do whatever the F I want. George, do you think crypto can save our old monetary system? I mean, that's why Bitcoin was created. Because our old monetary system almost did collapse in 2008. It's funny to think about. It's not funny to think about, but it is, and it's also scary to think about how the world's financial system all almost collapsed simultaneously due to how it was designed and really due to greed. And everyone had to be bailed out. If there wasn't a bailout and we were going to let the banks collapse, we would have been thrown into the dark ages. So, you know, it's not as solid as people think. It really isn't. And again, when you break down how money works or the finances of this country, and I'm sure other countries are exactly the same, if you break it down quite simply, you'll understand that it's an unsustainable system. If any individual followed the same path, they would have been bankrupt a long time ago. But the only reason why we don't go bankrupt as a nation is because we have a money printer and we have the ability to borrow a lot of money, and that's it. But if one of those things stop, that's going to be disastrous. All right, guys. Stay strong. Stay focused on the future. Don't get flooded out of the market. We do have some macro stuff, not going to lie, later this week. But things are still going according to plan. Okay, we filled the CME Gap. We're touching upon this trend line. The fundamentals are still great. The buying is still happening. So, continue to stay the course, guys. Smash it a like. Subscribe to the channel. Have a good one. Take care.